I know many people who on this day, they make it a kind of a tradition to also watch the movie, The Passion of the Christ, which came out about 20 years ago. And it was written with inspiration in mind of all four Gospels. All four Gospels were used to create the script for The Passion of the Christ. But also there were some other meditations that were used from various people throughout time. One of them was Blessed Anne Catherine Emmerich, who is an Augustinian nun who probably lived in the 1800s. And she was one who was gifted with visions. She was gifted a vision of the crucifixion and some other things too. And so on those meditations, the Passion of the Christ was based on that as well. There was a lot of inspiration from her book, The Dolorous Passion of Christ. And what we can gather from that writing and also from each of the Passion narratives in the Gospels is that the suffering was quite great of Jesus. It is probably beyond our comprehension how much he suffered. And thinking about that, I was praying in front of a crucifix this morning and looking at the corpus of Jesus on the cross. And I reflected upon that and the rest of Jesus and his time before his crucifixion, how he went out and preached to the people, and just the kindness of Jesus, the gentleness of Jesus, the lovingness and tenderness of Jesus, and how this completely innocent man, completely innocent God-man, was handed over and subjected to such great suffering. And I kind of, it's tough to, it's kind of incredible to ponder how someone so innocent, like that Passover lamb, that lamb without blemish, could suffer so much, how someone would want to do this to him. And so it kind of made me think about this and reflect that Jesus didn't need to bring about salvation in this way. He could have just snapped his fingers and we could have had salvation. He could have just said, "You're all saved." But for some reason, the Lord chose to do this. He chose to go this route to attain our salvation. And I think about that in many terms. I've kind of pondered why this may be. First, maybe to remind the people of Israel of that first Passover when that first unblemished lamb was offered. And that was what saved them. That now at one time God promised that he would save his people in a greater way, that he does that through this sacrifice on the cross. But I think there's something more that speaks to me this day about why Jesus did this, why he suffered for our salvation. Because he wants us to know that he is a God that suffers with us. That we aren't left to figure out life and to be absent of any love in this world, but our Lord desires to suffer with us. And that's such great news. That's why we call it Good Friday, because the good news of this day is that our God does desire to suffer with us because we are ones who suffer. Some of us greater than others. And that suffering probably comes to mind maybe every day, but periodically. And the great thing about it is that our God isn't distant. That our God wanted to show us that he isn't a distant God that just set us to be and doesn't have any desire to interact with our lives. But no, he wants to interact with our lives, and even in the most difficult ways. That there are many ways that we suffer, whether it's through physical sickness or anything of the mind or of spirit, or watching people suffer vicariously. That the Lord wants us to know that throughout all of that, that he is a God that desires to be in the midst of that suffering, to bear the burdens, to bear the crosses that we have. And I think that's such great news because there are a lot of things to burden us. There are a lot of ways that we suffer. There are a lot of ways that we view and we see those others who we love to suffer. But the great news about that all is that the Lord on this day chose something that was so vile, so intimidating, this image of the cross, which was used as a form of execution. Used that symbol that was really thought to have at one point be of no hope of it all, but uses that symbol of despair and turns it into hope. And through that, through his sufferings, through God's sufferings, through his cross, and through that great image that was of despair, we have hope. And through the cross and through his sufferings, we are saved.